perspective. So let's get into it. Just give me 1 second. What I'm going to ask the panel to do, just very quickly to start, is I guess just share a little bit of your brand transformation journey. Maybe if I can start with you, Juliana. When did you start, and what was prompting the change for your brands?
I think 3 main prompts. First of all, APAC. A few years ago, we realized, okay, more and more, it was becoming more and very, very highly connected region. So it's really imperative for the brand to be transformed into a very digitally present brand. So that was one. Secondly, based on the trends in digital, a lot of our consumers have changing digital habits, right? So something that has worked like 5 months or even 5 days ago might not really be valid anymore, right? It becomes very obsolete, very fast, right? So being able to be very agile, and speed is also very important. So we need to, not just for the brand, but as an organization, we had to transform ourselves into a very fast and agile organization in order to keep up with the changes. And thirdly is based on our consumers. Based on what you just said, our consumers, the products, Huggies, it only really has a 2 to 2.5 years lifespan. So basically, we have to track our female consumers, very niche segment, who are pregnant moms in their 25 to 40 years old segment. We really need to be where they are. Okay, so they are basically millennials. A lot of them are millennials who are very digitally savvy. So we need to really be where they are. So that's basically on all the digital channels that they are exposed to. Thirdly is really, and the most important thing is because our consumers are there. The consumers are on digital. So that's why the brand transformation that we did was to really make our brand into a very digitally present brand.
Great, thank you, Juliana. Maybe we now go to Lucy, similar question.
So, as you mentioned, Richard, we work with a lot of businesses that are going through transformation of some type. And we did a research study earlier this year. So in Asia Pacific, 90% of businesses are somewhere, they say, on the journey of transforming their brand and their business. I think if you look at the reasons why so many companies are saying that they're going through some kind of big transformation at the moment, I'd say there's 2 key reasons. And the first one is fear. And if you're sat there as a marketer right now not feeling afraid, you should be. Because in macro terms, we're going through a period of economic slowdown. In every single category, there are new business models disrupting your category. And growth is incredibly hard to find now. Yeah, so traditional sources of growth from increasing in distribution, getting into new markets, you know what? You've all done that. And growth is incredibly hard to find. So a lot of business leaders are feeling very afraid at the moment. And the second motivator is fame. So there's all this lovely, shiny new technology out there. I'm going to be the first one with a chatbot on my brand to connect with consumers, and I'm going to be famous, and my CEO is going to love me. And I think they're both good motivators. I think we should all be feeling a healthy amount of fear, and it would be nice if we were all famous.
Fantastic. So fear and fame, 2 of the primary motivators for marketers when it comes to brand transformation. Maybe if we could then lastly ask Lynette the same question. Maybe you could talk more from a Singapore perspective.
So how much time do I have? A couple of years? Well, as you know, and I'm sure some of you in the audience know that we just changed our brand a couple of weeks ago on the 24th of August. From Your Singapore to Passion Made Possible. And the journey has been I would say, it's been very intense and a very emotional one that sort of engaged the heart and the mind. Perhaps I can talk a little bit about the brand and the journey. So the key shift was really, Your Singapore was hatched in about 2009, the cusp of Facebook and the digital revolution. So it was really about personalization, hence Your Singapore. But the brand that we have today, which is Passion Made Possible, is really about personal stories. It's about the story of how Singapore is made. It's about an attitude, and it's an inside-out story. So as you can see, the shift is huge. In terms of the journey, how we really began was we did not begin with a mind to change. It was really, as I'm sure a lot of brand marketers here and marketeers, it was really part of a review. Right? Like we all have annual health checks. So every now and then, in a couple of years, we have a health check. And I must say the health check was very comprehensive. So we looked at the external macro operating environment. So we looked at competition, how destinations were changing, how were they positioning themselves. And we also looked externally in terms of what consumers wanted. You know, how have their attitudes and their aspirations changed? And of course, as part of the health check, we looked internally as to, okay, where is Singapore today? How are we shaping out? How have we morphed? And last but not least, very importantly, the people and owners of this brand. I think the key difference between a destination country brand is that and a commercial brand is, as a tourism board, we don't have 100% control over the brand. You have the people who live in Singapore, as well as the travel stakeholders. So I would say the review was extensive, and maybe I can talk about it later, but we had 3 stages. We had the review and the analysis, which was extensive, and of course we had the soul-searching brand development, and of course the last piece, which was the 100-meter dash, which was the campaign development.
Fantastic. And to that point that you were making about change, I mean, one of the sometimes one of the tenets of marketing is that, you know, brands need to stay consistent. That maybe brands shouldn't change. And I can imagine from a Singapore perspective, that's a huge debate. So could you just talk a little bit about that as part of it? How hard was it to convince, I guess, stakeholders that change needed to happen?
So I think one of the key learning lessons for us was as part of the process of analysis and review, it was very extensive, and it included many different sections of people in the organization, people from the industry, and consumers themselves, as well as, I would say, Singaporeans and residents of Singapore. So because of the extensive discussions and analysis and engagement, we had a lot of feedback, but there was also a lot of, I would say, co-creation and interaction. So the change definitely was not easy, but I would say that having that constant dialogue, that open dialogue, really helped with the change, whether it's within the organization, between us and our partners, as well as, I guess, Singaporeans. Great.
So maybe just to ask the rest of the panel, if you can also contribute, what do you think about that comment that brands need to stay consistent and they shouldn't change?
I think the overall brand promise, say for Huggies, has always been embrace mom's hugs, right? So the overall brand promise, I don't think should change because that's really is the brand identity. But how you execute it can change. And that needs to be based on basically where your consumers are.
I think it's not so much about change for the sake of changing. I think it's rather to innovate. I think the keyword is really to innovate. So if you take AirAsia as a brand, our brand promise, our brand belief, now I can fly everything, is still the same. But we consistently innovate to stay relevant, to stay on time, and the flexibility need to be there, need to be agile, because every day the market move on. So I think it's about the ability to accept changes and to use I would say the technology or the platform available during that time, and to innovate yourself. Because what is right, maybe she was saying 5 days ago, maybe nowadays it's just 1 day ago, may not be relevant the next day. So your brand promise, all this is the same, but it's your approach, and you innovate yourself to make sure that you stay ahead. I think that should be the right word rather than change for the sake of changing. Yeah.
Great. Okay, if I can go on to ask Lucy. One marketing commentator recently was talking about transformation, and you've obviously been doing some very interesting research in that area. And he made the point that 90% of the transformation that's going on at the moment is internal, inside organizations, and it's not really having any benefit or immediate benefit for consumers. So there's a lot of organizational change going on, but the end consumer's not getting any benefit from that. Well, what's your view in terms of the work that you're doing with brands? Do you see that as a problem?
Yeah, I think that was Mark Ritson, right?
Right.
And I do love it when he's wrong, as he so often is. And I don't know which businesses he's working with, but even just listening to Spencer today, Juliana today, when they're talking about how they're innovating, how they're changing the way they're marketing, it's very clearly with a consumer focus. And we see that with our clients as well. And I think there's a simple reason for that. Of course, technology enables a lot of organizational efficiency. Yeah, so every organization is looking at how technology can make supply chain more efficient, routes to market more efficient, how can they get cost savings through that. But more importantly, every organization is looking for growth. And I talked before about how growth is just harder to find. Well, you don't grow through cost savings. You only grow through your consumers and customers, through finding new audiences, finding new value to bring to your customers. And in this research that we did, it was very clear that the top reasons for going through change, the first reason was to reach new audiences. And that really speaks to that need for brands to find new sources of growth. So how, through innovation, can brands find new audiences? So, for example, I work a lot with Nestlé. It's a 75-year-old company. How can Nestlé innovate around the core brands that they have to find new audiences? That's where you'll see Nestlé investing in things like food delivery services, because they're trying to find new markets when new markets are hard to find. The second reason was actually to deliver value in new ways to consumers. So all of the reasons for organizations going through change are very, very consumer focused. And the operational efficiency reasons were all of the last reasons given, when respondents, and it was like, well, yes, we'd like some supply chain efficiency. That would be lovely to have, but that's not the top priority. The top priorities are all consumer focused, looking at what do consumers really want today, and how can you gain competitive advantage through that.
Great. Any other comments on that from the panel? I'll move on. You've touched on it just there, Lucy. I was going to ask Juliana, because we talked about it a little bit before. Obviously, one of the biggest challenges with transformation is transformation internally and making change within the organization to enable you to market differently. Maybe ask Juliana to start, but then maybe get the other panel members to comment on how difficult it is to get organizational change happening so that the marketing transformation can happen.
So I used to be in management consulting, and I've done a lot of change management projects before for clients. I would say that this particular change management project is the hardest one I've ever done, because I basically need to transform an organization that was very traditionally traditional marketing focused. Things have been following the same process for a long time. I've got people, marketing directors, who have been in traditional marketing for like past 20, 30 years. I need to transform them into thinking that Kimberly-Clark needs to be a customer-centric, data-driven, and agile omni-channel sales and marketing organization. So
quite a challenge.
Quite a challenge. So how can I then influence people who have been doing traditional for 25 years to put 70% of their budgets from traditional to digital? I think definitely that was a challenge. And then obviously I use data a lot. So I'm a data girl, and I always wanted to use data. to really prove that if you do this and this, then you could have got this and this, right? So that's one. And then secondly, we've all mentioned today is the consumers. If you don't do what the consumers want you to do, then you're going to fail. So those two were really key messages that I had to really sell across to my colleagues. But what really helped was actually senior leadership endorsement. So our CEO, and he's actually also spoken in the press recently that we're changing how we're operating. We're really transforming the brand using digital innovations, and also being at the forefront of in e-commerce. So every day, in every single town hall, he's always been talking about digital first. Okay, so digital first has always been in our organization DNA because senior leaders have always been talking about this for so long, for the past 3-4 years now. So that has really been embraced inside everyone's DNA now. So I think the senior leadership endorsement definitely really helped.
Great, thank you. Spencer, maybe you'd like to comment on that as well?
I think you have to start from the right culture. For us, we have a very open organization. Our leadership team, they are open. We have an open structure concept in a sense that from work and from how we sit and interact. So we get the right culture first. And for us, we are born as a challenger brand. We are the disruptor. So we continue to disrupt. Because you don't disrupt, you will be disrupt. And then we use a lot of what is available right now in the market, whether it's technology, looking at data, or whatnot. But we still take some risks because sometimes if you don't take risks, there's no growth. And if you overlook at data, if there will not be a lot of company that is so-called sexy today. First of all, who will say, I would like to fly low cost 16 years ago? They will go and protest, where's my free orange juice? So again, it's about, it's about the right culture, staying ahead of the market, use your technology or data, but have the right mindset. You can put the best PowerPoint presentation. You can get the best consultant. You don't have the right culture, right mindset, right people. You don't have a brand. You don't have a company.
Just to quickly ask, how easy is it to stay a challenger brand?
It's not easy. That's why we have to always be very honest and very transparent. Like I keep saying this, we generally be very focused at our task. We try to cut off all the noise. We try not to take compliment too seriously. We always look at how we can further improve as an organization, and we focus a lot on ourselves how to do better. Because once success builds success, but when you get success to your head, then you corrupt your mindset and your culture will be gone the next day. So very important to keep focused and always stay true to your own objective.
Great insight. Lucy, in terms of the work that you do with your clients and their challenges organizationally?
I think it's really interesting to look at how those challenges differ between a traditional category leader brand like Huggies versus a disruptor brand. And disruptor brands like you guys at AirAsia are very good at innovating and failing fast and have a mentality, we'll give it a go, we'll try and disrupt. And the challenge for disruptor brands is generally keeping that disruption and scaling it. Traditional leader brands generally don't have problems with doing things at scale. They have a lot more problem moving to the mindset of fast innovation, speed, agility. And we see a lot of, particularly with big leader brands, a lot of innovation projects just getting stuck at kind of concept stage, not really making it out to the market. And one of the sort of strongest pieces of advice I would give, particularly to traditional brands, is to look for fast pilots. Fast pilots where you can get it out into the market and have a proof of concept, because that then gives you all the data that you need to convince stakeholders to move forward with that particular innovation. And brands that adopt that kind of fast pilot model generally a lot more successful in starting to move the organizational mindset towards more continuous innovation.
Yeah, so just based on what Lucy just mentioned, fast pilot. So one thing that I had to change was also what you've just mentioned as well, a test and learn, risk-taking culture. So again, doing things fast, testing a small pilot. So that's why Singapore is, we test a lot of pilots here, because if you are successful, then great, you carry on. But if you fail small as well. So running a lot of pilots is also something that we've been doing. We've started to do. So that was quite hard to change at first, but I think now people are embracing the success from a few pilots, and they're willing to do more and more.
So if you don't see me again, means I fail in taking my risk.
Maybe Lynette, just to finish on that point, in terms of the transformation journey and transforming the organisation itself, what sort of challenges have you faced and seen?
I mean, I think it's a truism that people usually don't embrace change; they resist it, and you probably get the most resistance from your own backyard, right, or in your own family. And I think that holds true for our journey. But I think what's important, or one key learning point for us, was really change. Brand changing is not just a marketing job. Right? It's also working alongside with HR, with finance, with the product developers, with the industry. It needs to be extensive beyond the marketing team. So with that, you're able to, I guess, spread the message more.
Great, yeah. Actually, I'm just going to quickly throw it open to the floor, because I know we've got some marketers in the audience who are going through major transformation. Are there any questions for the panel at this point? Sure, I'm not sure we can hear you. I hope we can. There's a microphone just coming.
Hello? Okay.
Hi.
Hi. I'm curious to hear from you guys if you have had any experiences, or you can think of any brands that have gone through transformations that have just not been successful, and what they could have done differently.
Okay, there's a good challenging question for the panel. I guess you could talk about your own brands, but possibly you want to talk about someone else's.
Maybe United Airlines?
Wow.
I have to be a good boy today. Well, maybe I'll just try to answer that question, not so much about other brand, but rather the failure of taking risks and doing the right assumption of future. So there's a lot of brands like we all know, Nokia, BlackBerry, even the days Kodak. Those brands are amazing brands. They built up over the years, very good capex, capital, whatnot. Not to say that, if I may, I don't think that anyone there have not predicted the future, but rather they're back on another journey. So I guess it's not so much about whether do you embrace technology or you embrace changes. That's why I go back to the same thing. Don't change because of change, but you need to change because you need to innovate yourself to stay relevant. And sometimes it's always easy to say that I want to make changes, but you only stay in your boardroom. You really need to have the entire organization. So as a marketer, you can only market, right? You create the demand, you simulate the demand, but you need the entire organization to deliver for you, from the front end to customer service to product promise to all your touch point. So I guess if you look at whether the brand stay relevant or not, it's pretty much of their own. I would say their own option. They have decided which journey they want to take, and you see some brand try to come back. But it's by changing some business model or whatnot. But in the end of the day, is how fast you react. So for us, I think if you look at the airline industry, there's just too many red tapes. So I can name a few, but I won't be able to come Singapore anymore. But it's all about removing red tapes first, then the innovation and the whole changes will come in. So yeah, I hope I addressed some of your question.
No names being mentioned by the panel by the looks of things. Lucy, do you want to?
Yeah, and again, I'm going to be polite to my clients and not mention names. But I want to talk about an approach that I think does not work. So that if you're thinking about this type of approach, you're already doing it, you can think about how to make it work better. I have 3 clients who've all set up innovation units in Silicon Valley. And that's kind of a seductive model because you go, that's going to bring our business a lot closer to the heart of technology innovation. We're going to get to know all of these startups. We're going to find all this amazing new technology that can completely change their business. And that's generally the intent of these types of innovation hubs. Now, in all of those cases, that's 3 separate cases, nothing has really come into the business that has gone to market and made a massive difference from those innovation units. And I think that there's a reason for this. And I now have one client who's starting to make it work. The reason for that is, if you think about the technology first, you're basically running around with shiny objects trying to find a problem for them to solve. So they were all going, look at this great technology, look at this great technology. What are we going to use it for? And not being able to embed it in the business. The way to make those kinds of innovation units work is to start by feeding them with real consumer problems, real business problems, and then go and find the solutions for that. So if you're thinking about how to make an innovation type unit work, start by thinking about the people that you're selling to rather than the technology, and then I think it has more chance of success.
Great insight. Any other questions from the audience? Yep. Ed? Do we have a microphone? Yep. Thank you. Just coming.
Thanks. Thank you. A question for Spencer from AirAsia. There's been a lot of disruption in your category, as you were saying, over the last many years. What do you think would be the changes that you see coming in the next, say, 10 years? How will the aviation industry change again?
Thanks for the question. Well, for us, we would like to see an open market, a real open sky like Europe, single market, maybe the best, airline, company that would like to fly from any part of ASEAN, to start with ASEAN first, because there's so much of opportunity. But we still think that the whole industry need to really open up, to really have a paradigm mindset to change, because there's just too many costs of the whole industry. If you want to grow, you need to be more cost efficient. There's just too many red tapes. Today, for example, if we have an open market for AirAsia, we reckon that we can put more planes in today. We can offer more low fare, more connectivity. But because there's still a lot of restrictions, and we cannot go to as many places as we hope for. So I guess the challenge will be how fast we can convince the relevant stakeholders in the industry to see the benefit of air connectivity, the benefit of having an open market, look at Europe, how fast we can put the technology in place. For us, we would like to have more technology in most of the hubs that we fly to. We hope that soon you do not need to use your passport to queue on the counter to check in. We can do face recognition and whatnot. So those are things that we are pushing constantly. So our biggest challenge is how do we move and change the whole ecosystem mindset and to be forefront rather than still be in a very traditional manner. Yeah.
Great answer. I just want to come back to something that was being discussed before, which was this idea of fast pilots. And what I wanted to ask was, in all of your organizations, I'm sure the concept of failing and failing fast isn't necessarily seen as a positive thing. I mean, it can be seen as testing and trialing, but it also can be seen as not succeeding. So with that concept of fast pilots, how difficult is it to sell testing and trialing change, I guess, in your organizations from a marketing perspective? Juliana?
I guess one thing I guess I've mentioned before, and it has been quite helpful, is we've got senior leadership endorsement, even for this. So we've set aside, actually a set of budget just for testing and learning every year. So as long as we don't go overblown with our pilots, everything is within a reasonable amount of money, then I think it's okay.
Spencer?
We are changing every day. That's the reality. We don't stay still because the market don't stay still. So I think go back to what we have always mentioned, the right culture, the right mindset, and a very clear objective. Yeah.
Okay, Lucy?
One of the interesting things is I look at this both from Ogilvy's own perspective as well as our client's perspective. And Ogilvy, like most agencies, is also looking at how does it transform the agency model. And we are taking the approach of doing relatively fast pilots in different markets, looking at flexing the model, what works best, what doesn't. But I think this point, and it's a very, very human point, right? Everybody can talk the kind of Silicon Valley language about fail fast and there's never a failure, it's always a learning. I tell you, for every head of our office who's driving their change, this is kind of scary stuff. And what it absolutely needs, whatever type of organization you are, is that absolute CEO level drive and endorsement. And where I see my clients really struggling with this is when the senior leadership isn't buying in. As you said, having that senior leadership buy-in, if they're not buying in, then it's not going to happen. And then it becomes way too scary, and then everybody bunkers down and doesn't want to try anything.
Lynette?
Well, I guess from our perspective, perhaps I'll come from a different angle about learning fast and failing. We do know that there's so much we can do, but the question we asked ourselves was how can we work with the industry to help them test and pilot? So this year we launched a program called the Marketing Innovation Program, which really is about giving companies and brands out there, small and large, an opportunity to test, learn, fail, hopefully not fail, hopefully succeed spectacularly. So that's our way of testing, and that is to help the industry out there, to give them a leg up with their project through an innovation program that provides grants and funding.
Fantastic. So the industry as a whole is getting to test and learn.
Exactly. So it's not kept within the organization, it's about helping others to succeed.
Great. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left, so I guess I'm going to ask the final sort of chestnut of a question, which is in all of your transformation experience that you're going through, what do you think has been your biggest learning? If I could ask each of you individually, maybe again start with Juliana.
I think three main things. Number one, I think right at the start, trying to set up the right culture. So we talked about test and learn, taking smart risk, having senior leadership endorsement, who then endorse local markets ownership of the digital. I think that's very important. So having the right culture is half of the job done. Secondly, I think the importance of embedding digital KPIs as part of your overall business KPIs is very important. And then having the local country leadership to own it. I say local because the digital landscape in different markets is very diverse between different markets. So having the local ownership of that is also very important. Again, that will also enhance digital savviness of the markets. And then finally, I think continuous innovation, continuous optimization of what you're doing, what the existing capabilities, and then also continuously innovating and building new capabilities that might become very prominent in the future. So even before this panel, there were speakers talking about AI, machine learning. So let's start on building some of those. It might be very nascent stage right now, but it will probably be quite big in the future. And when I say in the near future, it could be just less than a year. So really preparing for the future.
Spencer, your kind of key learnings?
I'm not going to repeat again. Why not just loosen up the gas a bit? Everybody look very serious here. I want to do this, although I may put my job at risk. How many of you, yeah. If I may need to send you my resume. Okay, how many of you in this room have not fly and experienced AirAsia before? Only one? Well, I get to keep my job, man. Oh, seriously, how many? Can you please stand up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only 5? Okay, I'm going to do this. Because we are low cost, I don't have a lot of budget. I need to pay a salary to our team. Tomorrow, we are starting our first flight from KL to Nha Trang, amazing place in Vietnam. The first 2% that have some sort of red color stuff on you,
Spencer, I'm sitting right.
not on stage. We'll give you your first ever experience with AirAsia for 2 KL to Nha Trang. The first 2 on the stage.
Okay.
Okay, so
Congratulations.
okay, sorry. So I have my team behind, Margaret and Christine. You can pass your details to them, and hope to see you in Nha Trang soon. Okay.
Well done, Spencer.
Okay. So this is also another example. So for AirAsia, we will never scare of taking risks. To give up film flight is another way of trying to understand the market. So by a very simple example, I know that we still have people that in this room have not flown AirAsia before. We need to get our marketing right. Now there's a lot of potential out there because everyone is the target market here. Everyone is our guest. So there's just 2 flights. Hopefully I won't lose my job for that.
I thought that was an excellent bit of shameless new route promotion.
We are low cost. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the organizer for giving me this airtime.
That's called smart content marketing.
I think you can trial that one again. I think that definitely worked. Lucy, key learnings.
Tempted to offer some kind of, free benchmarking assessment from Ogilvy Red, but I suspect I won't get quite an enthusiastic response. I'm going to give you, this has been my best learning from working with Nestlé for over 20 years. And it's one I think you can all take right back to your organizations. One of the problems with this kind of continuously looking to the future and learning new stuff, as Juliana was talking about, is, do you know what? It's exhausting. I mean, yesterday I was learning about AI in sports coaching and my brain was about to explode. And one of the biggest problems when transformation and innovation needs to be driven at the top by senior leadership, most senior leadership is a bit old. Not you, Ed, you're obviously still lovely and young, you're lovely and young. But most senior leadership is at least my age or a bit older. And what that means is senior leaders didn't grow up with the internet at university. Yeah, if I'd have been 2 years younger, I would have, but I didn't. Which means that we're always in having to learn. This isn't our life, we're having to learn. And that is hard for senior leaders who have a lot to think about. Now, Nestlé did this brilliant thing. They set up something called the Digital Acceleration Team. This is made up of younger, next generation leaders, kind of late 20s, early 30s, who are digital natives. And they get together in the center, do an 8-month intensive program, and then go back to their local markets. But part of that program is reverse mentoring. See, the only reason I can talk about any kind of digital technology these days is I have teenagers who teach me like what's going on with Snapchat and stuff. And so this reverse mentoring is very clever because these are the guys who are learning all the time about the new stuff out there, and they're bringing out to the CEO, the CMO, to Tom Bidet, and bringing that perspective to the senior leadership. And at the same time, the senior leadership is mentoring them on the overall business wisdom, which obviously they have more experience in. So I think that every organization can take that, set up a reverse mentoring program, help us old folks keep on top of things.
Wonderful. Okay, to finish, Lynette?
So for me, I think there are 2 things. One is about meaning on a personal level. I think for any change to happen, you need to ensure that on the very personal level, on an individual level, it makes sense and it makes meaning. So that's one. 2 is, as marketers, I think immediately, the first thing we think of is marketing, of obvious reasons. That's our job. But really, for change to happen, it's about change management and culture. So I think one of the most helpful things for us when we were developing this was the question we asked ourselves was, how do we entrench the new thinking into the culture of the organization, and how do we grow the capabilities? So one of the things that we launched in conjunction alongside the new brand was actually a capability development program where we integrated the new thinking into this new marketing college. So it's about building a certain culture and capability and new ways of thinking. So again, it's about making meaning on the individual level. It needs to hit their hearts. And the other one is in terms of the heads, you need to bring them along with a culture scheme or a capability program.
Fantastic. Well, we are right out of time. If I could ask everyone just really to give this fantastic panel a round of applause.